Brian Moran, founder of Government CIO. Welcome to Government CIO Magazine.
Hi, I'm Edson with Government CIO. We're at National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Science on a Sphere Room with Joe Klimavicz, Chief Information Officer.
Our goal for portfolio management is to ensure the effectiveness and efficiency across the entire NOAA IT spend. And so it's not just about controlling or increasing productivity, but it's also about controlling costs, making sure that we support the mission with new technologies, capabilities, enterprise-wide services, and the supporting underlying IT infrastructure. Our portfolio management is really focused in on building a NOAA-wide shared services implementation. Think of this as we're bidding our services to make sure that we drive out unnecessary redundancy, any duplication, overlap. What we're trying to do here is to really modernize our IT services without a lot of additional expenditures. Increase the use of common IT services. So one of the ways we're trying to do this is through strategic sourcing. In the past, we used to let different organizations, different offices do their own acquisitions, IT acquisitions, and now we're trying to drive more and more to alignment of and kind of bidding of similar requirements so we can acquire it once and use many times. One of the programs that we put in place in 2010 to do this is called NOAA Link, where we have about 10 small businesses that are all competing against each other for the work, and that gets us a much better unit price. It also allows us to centrally provision services and implement standards. We've also made extensive use of cloud services, and this has a lot of advantages in terms of delivering, provisioning services very quickly. And we can use cutting-edge technology. So there's a huge advantage to using cloud solutions. I just mentioned two examples real quickly. One was we moved all of our email systems, 19 different separate email systems, to the cloud, and this resulted in our analysis resulted in a 50% cost reduction if we had to build a similar capability in-house. And so we actually have more capability with that solution, but at a much lower cost. And then the second one is that we moved everyone in last year to from BlackBerries as our standard mobile device to iPhones and iPads, and we were able to reduce the cost, provision a more user-friendly tool, and at no additional cost. So then we basically save money, a greater capability, and yet in iPhones, a capability that people really they use at home. They like to use much more user friendly. I think in terms of best practices, I like to look at it as lessons learned. Every time we make or complete one of these major initiatives in terms of consolidation, standardization, enterprise-wide services, we always go back and capture the lessons learned so that we can improve and also share with everybody so we can all get better. I think one of the things we see often is you've got to identify all your key stakeholders early. And some of the key stakeholders might not be easy to understand. You think obviously the IT personnel, obviously the end user customer, but there's a lot of people in the support areas that are going to have a say in what your solution looks like. General counsel, acquisition, the CFOs, and they all need to be brought in early. Another key aspect is requirements. You need to make sure that you're not over prescripting a solution in terms of requirements, especially as we move more and more to cloud solutions. But if you don't get the requirements right, it can drive you to a totally different technology, a different solution. So we spend a lot of time on requirements. I think another area, as we buy more than we actually build, is in terms of service agreements. This basically is a use provision, and in a lot of cases the government cannot abide by the commercial terms of service. So we thought early on when we started moving to common solutions that we could accept terms of service that have been negotiated by other departments, other agencies. As it turns out, we have different lawyers that have different views on this, so we end up wanting to tweak terms of service agreements. And so that's something that needs to be worked early on in the process. I think communications is key. Having a centralized place where all the communications can be captured. We typically will establish a website. And so if you want to know anything about this project, anything about this initiative, go to this site and you can get all the definitive information that we have. I also think sending out communications to all the end customers, to the stakeholders, letting them know where we are in the project is key. You can't over-communicate on these things. Training. It either needs to be seamless or intuitive, but as you deliver these new capabilities, the last thing you want to do is have a major cutover, decommission legacy, and then have somebody say, I don't know how to use a capability. So we typically make training optional. We have CBTs, we have classes. In some cases, you may think it's intuitive, but we really need to make sure that people can use the new solution on day one, and that's something we continually need to focus in on. I guess lastly, I would just say that as you get to these solutions that are provisioned out there in somebody else's infrastructure, whether it be commercial or another agency, is you need to be sensitive to who's making changes, who has change authority, because in a lot of cases with cloud solutions, you have an application owned and managed by one company, you have the infrastructure owned and managed by another company, and you need to look at both of those in aggregate for your security posture. And so changes made by either one unilaterally may not be communicated to the government, but either one may have significant impact on your security posture. So those are things that need to be worked on up front. I guess one other point on this is as you move more and more to shared services and cloud solutions, your network is your basically your lifeline to getting that service. And I think you need to make sure that you're spending the right amount of money and making sure your network is robust enough, reliable enough. And in cases in NOAA, as you can see from we have to work across the globe, a lot of data, a lot of information, and we're moving that information back and forth, and we're very sensitive to data integrity. If there's any bit losses or there's bottlenecks in the network, that'll impact our ability to use the shared service. Now, transparency is very important. We're out there in the public light all the time. Public counts on our information to save lives and property. We have a tremendous impact on the economy, not just from the weather and the climate, but fishing communities and so on count on our information. So it's very important that people can count on our information. A couple of points besides the memo on transparency and open government that the President signed on his first day in office. Recently issued an executive order on May 9th entitled Making Open and Machine Readable the New Default for Government Information. And simultaneously, OMB released an accompanying open data policy. We believe that NOAA is very well positioned to implement both of these, both the executive order and the new policy. Part of this is that we understand that the importance of transparency. We have for a long time, and we have an environmental data management committee. And a couple of years ago, they really made a concerted effort to review our policies, our directives, our procedures, to look at information from a life cycle perspective, to make sure that even before we embark on a data collection project, that we understand how the data is going to be managed, the metadata, associated metadata, the policies, where it's going to be stored, but looking at it from a life cycle perspective. And that's really what you need to do. So I think going forward, we're going to continue working with this, this committee, our Environmental Data Management Committee, and also all of our stakeholders to ensure that our implementation is a sound one and that we're hitting the mark in this area. As I said earlier, communications is key for projects, but it's also key for ongoing situation awareness and responding to events around the world. So NOAA has a permanent representative in DHS's National Operations Center. That person reports to me, and so through the Homeland Security Program Office. And what they're doing there is they're providing NOAA information, products, support directly to DHS leadership on a daily basis. What's important there is that they also report back to us and give us a little bit of lead time. Something's developing, a situation's developing where we might need to redeploy assets or tailor our information that we're producing to respond to a particular situation, emergency situation. But we also have a variety of liaisons with other agencies, organizations in this area. Mention a few is that we've got a liaison with FEMA's National Response Coordination Center, providing weather support primarily during emergencies. We've got staff with U.S. Northcom, with the Coast Guard, with the Navy, and soon to be with PACOM, U.S. PACOM out in Hawaii. So it's very important that we have that interface between our customers, especially customers that need information very quickly in time of emergency. But I think that this really weather data, our information, our environmental information is key to the federal response. So everybody wants our information as a backdrop to their activities. And I think it improves federal response overall to emergencies when they have our information. And it also works toward a common operating picture, a consistent message, especially with these emergencies. You have fairly dynamic situations. The weather can play a key part in that, and we want to make sure that the best information out there is being used to respond to these events. Well, NOAA is a central agency for big data. I mean, we've been working with big data for many years. Most of our programs actually depend on big data. So we have a lot of experience with it. Our weather forecasts weather forecasters rely on the model outputs from our supercomputers. The supercomputers are fed by massive volumes of data from our satellites, our radars, weather balloons, ocean buoys. We also have our own fleet of ships and aircraft that are collecting observations, and this all gets fed into the supercomputers. This large data flow must be managed effectively, rapidly moving a large number of bits securely. It needs to be collected, it needs to be processed, distributed, and it's not just the weather. I mean, everybody's very familiar with the weather forecasting, but it's climate modeling. It requires a tremendous amount of information. We'll be looking 100 years in the past, 100 years in the future. Worldwide, it's a lot of information that needs to be processed. We do a lot of mapping and undersea mappings, ocean floors, do a lot of coastal mapping, and all these processes require a tremendous amount of information. Our satellites, we have geostationary satellites, polar satellites. They're collecting close to 2 billion observations per day and generating a tremendous amount of information. I think that this exponential growth of data, it's only going to continue in the foreseeable future. Sensors are becoming ubiquitous. They're becoming less expensive. and people are finding ways of aggregating all this sensor information, and it's going to produce an untold amount of information that has to be effectively used and processed. I would say key considerations in working with big data, you need to know what you have. So understanding your data holdings is key. Looking at it from a life cycle, as we talked about before, from a policy perspective, how's it going to be managed? And then I think metadata is absolutely key. One of the challenges that we have with metadata, because our archives have information that in some cases is over 200 years old, you do not know how the information is going to be used 100 years, 200 years in the future. So how do you know which metadata fields to populate to, that are going to be important? How's that information going to be used 100 years into the future? That's key, but making these critical decisions up front helps in that aspect. I think lastly, in terms of big data, we want to try to bring as much of the commercial analytics as possible to help us sift through this. Certainly in a lot of areas we have our own specific models, but to a large extent, if we can use commercial analytics, that is the way to go. Like our Homeland Security Program Office, I think our NOAA CIO office is pretty broad. It's not just a traditional IT shop. And so one area, well, we've got a lot of interesting areas, but one area I'd like to highlight is our high performance computing program. This program has been one of the most successful, I believe, in NOAA since I've been here, and some of our greatest accomplishments. And in 2008, we spent that summer building a one NOAA high performance strategic plan. So how do we want to bring all of our computers together? What's the future look like? Architecture, all that kind of and we did that throughout that summer. And what we wanted to do was go from a lab-centric supercomputing environment to a remote shared computing environment. And this was something that required us to look at it from a holistic perspective, all the assets. Basically, our scientists wanted to know how they could get the most compute as efficiently as possible, and then if we're going to share these assets, how are we going to do that? So we laid all that out. I think in the end, from 2008 to last month, what we ended up with is a 20x increase in research and development supercomputing and a 3x increase in operational supercomputing. We also now have a common architecture from research all the way to operations. We're able to move work from research into operations much faster. We also increased storage, networks, et cetera, to make sure that everything was supported. So we looked at this as an integrated system. And this was all done with a lot of kind of preparatory work we had done with Department of Energy, with National Science Foundation, where we were able to leverage their leading leadership class supercomputers to understand what we needed to do to build out our own capabilities. I also think it's important that one of the biggest dedicated climate research computer in the world is co-located with Department of Energy's their Oak Ridge National Laboratory data center. And by taking advantage of an existing data center, we're able to be very efficient about maximizing the compute while minimizing our costs for data centers, power, et cetera. So we're taking advantage of leveraging existing capabilities to provision as much capability as we can. We also went in with Department of Energy and funded 5% of the Titan supercomputer down at Oak Ridge. This computer, until recently, was the fastest supercomputer in the world, and really cutting-edge technologies. And so what we were able to do is to put our 5% in with Department of Energy, get significant time on that computer, and we're able to test our applications, our models on really cutting-edge science and really push science. And that's what it's all about, is figuring how to take our IT funding and our IT investments leverage them to the maximum extent possible to really propel NOAA's mission.